The Sachem 2 is the updated version of the Sachem 1. It is a scooter deck from AO Scooters, and it is 5.35 inches wide and comes in 3 different lengths: 20.5, 22, and 23. The deck weighs between 3.7 and 4 pounds depending on which length you get. That being said, the weight is very evenly distributed throughout the whole deck, so it feels very light. The Sachem 1 had some snapping issues in the head tube, so they redesigned it, and it's got much thicker walls going up to the head tube. It's also 3 millimeters thinner than the Sachem 1, so it kind of feels a little closer to the rails and ledges that you're grinding on. Almost similar to a Paramount, but not nearly as flexible as a Paramount. When Andy of AO came into my local bike shop, we had a long conversation about the Sachem and new products that are coming out, and he explained to me a lot of the things about the Sachem that make it special. He explained to me the importance of making a thick wall that is vertical throughout the extrusion of the deck. So if you make the vertical walls of the deck extrusion thicker, it prevents bananaing much more than making the horizontal walls thicker, because if you make the horizontal walls thicker, it isn't doing much for the structural integrity of the deck when it comes to the banana factor. Because if I try to take something like this, something very flat, and bend it this way, it's going to bend very easily. But if I take it sideways and try to bend it, it's very difficult to bend. So if you make these walls thicker, it is much less likely to bend. Out of all of the different decks with dropouts that I've ridden, that being the Space, Fountain, Siren, Native, and even the Bones deck I worked with a little bit, this one's probably the easiest, I'd say, just because the middle of the extrusion of the deck is very wide, so the spacers are very long, so they don't get lost as easily when putting the deck ends in and putting the axle through. Also, they're very thin, and they kind of sit in the deck even when the bolt's not in there. They don't move around very much, so it's very easy to get the back wheel on compared to other reinforced decks. I'd say the concave is low, but not non-existent. It's definitely there. It just is much more mellow compared to other decks, which I actually quite enjoy. It's much more comfortable landing from high places or even just high impact, just because there's not like a very sharp edge. Something with high concave I would say would be like a Phoenix deck, or maybe even a Space. And the newer TSIs have a lot of concave. And then something in the middle I'd say would be probably like a Siren, because the concave is so spread out. But a Fountain also has a lot of concave as well. Something with zero concave, for example, would be like an Envy deck or a North deck. They technically have a little bit, but they have so little that you can't even feel it. You can definitely feel it on the Sachem. It's just very low. A few people did ask me to compare it to the Siren, and I will gladly, because I think there are a lot of perks of this deck over a Siren. And because it's less wide and it's in between a 5 and a 6, you can kind of use your toes against the edge of the deck a little more, rather than on the Siren you just kind of whip with the bottom of your foot. Versus this deck or a 5 wide, you kind of curve your toes around the edge of the deck. And I remember when I learned how to tail whip, that was kind of an influential part of learning it, was kind of using your toes through your shoe to grab the edge of the deck and whip it around. And I kind of started doing that again on this deck because I could do it. On the Siren, it's not as easy to get your toes around the edge because then your foot is so far away from the deck. At that point, your heel is on the other edge, and sometimes it feels kind of uncomfortable, but then again, you learn how to whip without curving your toes around it on the Siren. The head tube angle is 84 degrees, so it's much steeper, and it feels super awesome for manuals. Like, really, really cool. I didn't realize what the difference would be beforehand. I've never ridden an 84 degree head tube angle. But it makes both nose manuals and manuals, like, there's a distinct lock-in point instead of you kind of jimmying around just trying to hold a manual. It's kind of like you jimmy, and then when you find that sweet spot, you kind of can hold it and then just have minor adjustments along the way. I can't stop doing manuals on it. I've been doing them around the quarter at my local skate park like every day I go. Or every day I can. It's not very nice outside. Again, it is very light. The weight is completely distributed evenly, so at every point in the deck it feels the same weight, which I really like, because then you can feel exactly where the deck is when you're whipping it around. It's really comfortable too. Just having a little more than 5 is great, because before this, I went from the Siren to a Phoenix because I like Phoenix, extra fun to ride. And I also wanted to feel like I was upgrading to the Sachem rather than downgrading from the Siren, even though that's not at all what it was. In fact, I probably upgraded to the Sachem because it feels really good. I've been telling everybody about it because I like it a lot. I wanted to touch on this subject a little more just because I have ridden a Paramount extensively. I rode a Paramount for almost an entire year. I have a problem. Well, I don't have the problem of snapping decks. I rarely ever snap decks. The only deck I've ever broken was a Space, and it's because I cut the dropout holes out so I could put big back pegs in it. But I've never broken a deck, and I never broke my Paramount. But the Paramount flexes so much, and it's the absolute worst for landing a big trick, because then your bars will wiggle back and forth, and it just feels so not sturdy, and you almost trust your scooter a little less. But with this thinner deck, it made me kind of like that thin feel again, because it's strong and because of the walls being so thick that when you land, it doesn't wiggle back and forth. Instead, you just land and you're solid. And it feels really good to like trust your scooter, because that's how your scooter should make it you feel when you ride it. You know, you should have parts that you feel confident riding. And I was nervous at first just because I had seen a few kids at my local have problems with the Sachem one, but immediately upon riding this deck, it just felt so much different, and it felt much stronger, and I don't know, it feels really good. I can't, it's hard for me to explain exactly why it feels good, but it just, there's something about it. It's very evenly distributed with the weight. The head tube angle is great. Smiths well. Slides pretty good. We're doing a lot of 50s on it. 50s feel good too. It's just fun to ride something really light. Real light, and a really cool size too, because I'm not used to riding a true 23, because the Siren's a little smaller than that. So, do I recommend it over the Siren? Yes. And that's because it's an easier upgrade from a 5 wide. The Siren's kind of a big leap, and I don't think there's anything wrong with the Siren, but I just think it's an easier route to go to get used to. And I think it's, in the end, for someone who is skeptical about buying a Siren, should be very sure on buying a Sachem, just because it has a familiar feel, and it's familiar but also new. And that's kind of why I like it so much, because it's very familiar, but also that new feel kind of makes you want to learn new tricks. I remember getting to the skate park and triple whipping it first try and bar whipping it first try and being like, what the hell, I don't get either of these tricks first try ever. Just because you feel very confident, and it's super light, so it comes right around, but you can still feel exactly where it is when you're whipping it around. And that's one of the biggest perks that I noticed immediately. So I was sent this deck by AO. I emailed them a little while ago to ask if we could kind of work something out, and big shouts to Andy for, hooking me up. I'm absolutely in love with it. Everyone that rides my scooter says they want my scooter. So everyone really likes it. It really is that nice median I was looking for, because I was really looking for something. I remember even going to Penn Skate and being like, oh man, I want a lighter scooter. And then coming back to my local and being like, no, I'm kind of okay with my scooter that I have now. But after finding this, I really can do that in between, and I can, rip up copings and do crazy rail tricks, but then I can also do my bar whips and my whip bars and all that kind of stuff that I also love doing, because I love kind of riding both. I don't like to stick with one thing. I like to change things up. So it really allows me to change things up without changing my scooter, which I love. Because I think that everyone should be able to ride something that feels comfortable, whatever they're riding. And sometimes your scooter kind of makes you feel limited to one thing, and that kind of stinks, because then you can't branch out. And I feel like scootering is all about branching out. It's all about learning new things and becoming comfortable with not only yourself, but with your scooter, and being able to express yourself on it. And then film dope clips and post them to Instagram and put stuff on YouTube or whatever. Yeah, I love it. I wanted to get the burnt pipe one, like the neochrome type one, but then I thought it might be too bold, so I went with the black. But I like all the colors too. I think it has a very bold yet safe choice of colors, because it comes in the glossy black, the raw, the matte black, and then it also comes in midnight blue, which stands out a little bit, and also the burn pipe. So I do have the HD black polish version. I wanted to get the HD version just because I was kind of afraid to go too light, because I kind of wanted something a little bit of weight, because I'm kind of used to riding something that is more on the heavy side, if you will. So yeah, I think it's awesome. It's super fun to ride. I'm so bummed that I can't ride right now, but I'm also glad that I can be making this video right now. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. Comment, hit me up on Instagram or something, DM me or comment on my post. I should be posting a clip of me riding along with this video to, kind of promote both. So that's what I got. Boom.